Hi everyone, and welcome to 1% Crime. If you're here, chances are you can't sleep, and that's okay. I'm here to keep you company with chilling true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive into tonight's case, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now, let's jump straight into the story. Kathy Martin was born on October 25, 1959, in Houston, Texas. She grew up in a loving and peaceful household and was especially close to her older sister. During her teenage years, Kathy met Mike Odom, the man she would eventually marry and start a family with. After their wedding, the couple settled down in a quiet suburb just outside of Houston. Not long after, they welcomed a daughter and then a son into their lives. Thanks to the financial support from Kathy's parents, Mike was able to work at his father-in-law's small sign factory, and Kathy stayed home to care for the children full-time. Life seemed stable and routine, until everything changed on March 3, 1987. That day began like any other. Mike went off to work, and later met friends at a bar. Meanwhile, Kathy stayed home with the kids. Later that evening, Mike tried calling her from a payphone, but she didn't pick up. That immediately raised red flags. Kathy was always home, and she always answered. Worried, Mike tried calling several more times, but got no response. Growing increasingly anxious, he reached out to their neighbor, Tim Robinson, and asked him to check on her. Tim went over and knocked on the door, but no one answered. He peeked through the living room window and saw the TV still on. He knocked again, still nothing. Now concerned, something was very wrong. Tim didn't go back home or call the police. Instead, he drove around looking for a police patrol. Eventually, he flagged down a police officer and explained the situation. Officers arrived at the house shortly after and knocked, but got no answer. They tried the front door. It was unlocked. Inside, they found a disturbing scene. Kathy's older daughter was lying unconscious on the couch, alive, but clearly traumatized. Officers called for an ambulance immediately. Continuing their search, they found the younger child safe in her crib. But in another room, they made a horrifying discovery. Kathy was found dead on the floor, naked, covered in blood, and with her arms bound by a light cord. It was a brutal scene. Paramedics rushed the older daughter to the hospital, while investigators began processing the crime scene. Kathy's father soon arrived at the house, but was not given many details. Instead, police advised him to go to the hospital to be with his granddaughter. It was there, in the waiting room, that he learned about Kathy's death from a news report on the TV. When Mike finally arrived at the house, police noticed something suspicious. He was late, and there were stains on his shirt that appeared to be blood. Investigators asked for his clothes and brought him in for questioning. Inside the home, they discovered more unsettling details. Blood was found in the bathroom, suggesting someone had attempted to clean up. There were no signs of forced entry, and all windows and doors, except the front, were locked. This led investigators to believe that either Kathy knew her killer and let them in, or the attacker had a key. They also speculated that the attacker may have threatened to hurt her children, causing Kathy to comply in hopes of protecting them. But ultimately, she was murdered. As doctors worked to save Kathy's daughter, they found she had suffered severe injuries. She had been brutally beaten, likely with bare hands. Her condition was critical, and survival was uncertain. Meanwhile, the autopsy revealed more horrifying details. Kathy had been stabbed 16 times, mostly in the abdomen, and had been sexually assaulted. Forensic experts collected biological evidence from the scene, hoping it would lead to the person responsible. This case shook the quiet suburban community, and it's just the beginning of the investigation. Stay tuned for what happened next, and remember, if you appreciate these deep dives into real-life mysteries, like, comment, and subscribe to 1% Crime. Until next time, stay safe and never stop asking questions. At the time, DNA analysis wasn't commonly used in forensic science. So, although investigators collected biological samples from the scene, they could only determine the attacker's blood type, not a DNA profile. The evidence was sent to the lab for further analysis. Early in the investigation, police had taken note of suspicious stains on Mike's shirt and kept his clothes for testing. His behavior that evening had also raised red flags. Despite not being able to reach his wife, he didn't rush home. Instead, he asked a neighbor to check on her. This pattern was familiar to investigators. In past cases, husbands who were guilty often tried to create an alibi by going out with friends and asking someone else to discover the body. Distancing themselves from the scene, police began digging deeper to see if Mike had possibly planned the murder in advance. That's when they uncovered something concerning Mike had a criminal record. After graduating high school, he had been arrested for selling drugs to an undercover officer. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but was released after serving just 2. He later married Kathy and seemed to have moved on with life, but the past was still relevant. Still, a criminal record wasn't enough to convict him. Investigators needed concrete evidence. At the same time, police also turned their attention to the neighbor, Tim. His actions were also questionable. Instead of calling 911 when he suspected something was wrong, he drove around town looking for a police car. When police searched his car, they found suspicious, blood-like stains on the carpet and sent them for testing. Now, investigators were beginning to suspect a disturbing possibility. Could Mike and Tim have conspired to commit the murder together? Meanwhile, a medical examiner completed the autopsy and confirmed a crucial detail. Kathy's time of death was around 1 p.m., several hours before she was discovered. Around 6 p.m. police now focused on the suspect's whereabouts during that 4 to 5 hour window. Both Mike and Tim claimed they were at work all day. Then, a potential breakthrough. 2 days after the murder, police received a call from the hospital. Kathy's daughter had regained consciousness. They rushed to speak with her, hoping for vital clues, but they were met with heartbreak. The 4-year-old's memory had been almost completely erased by the trauma. She remembered only a vague image, a light-haired man entering the house. This conflicted with Mike and Tim's appearance, as both had dark hair. Still, police didn't rule them out, understanding that such trauma could distort a child's memory. Soon after, the forensic lab called with surprising results. The stain found on Tim's car carpet wasn't blood, it was motor oil, and the stain on Mike's shirt, just paint. Both were harmless. Additionally, multiple co-workers confirmed that Mike and Tim had been at work the entire day and didn't leave until the evening. Lie detector tests also showed that neither of them was being deceptive. With no physical evidence linking Mike or Tim to the crime, investigators had to look elsewhere. They began reviewing the case from the ground up and talking to Kathy's relatives and close friends, trying to identify anyone familiar enough to have entered her home without raising suspicion. One name kept coming up: Greg, Kathy's brother-in-law. Loved ones revealed disturbing details. Kathy had frequently complained about Greg's inappropriate behavior. According to her, Greg often flirted with her, made sexual advances, and commented on her appearance, especially her abdomen. And notably, most of Kathy's stab wounds had been concentrated in that area. The police soon learned that Greg had a criminal history of his own, including drug use. That gave investigators more reason to look into him. When they checked for physical evidence, they found Greg's fingerprint in the house and a strand of his hair. However, this wasn't definitive. Greg was a family member and often visited, so the presence of his hair and fingerprints could have predated the murder. Still, suspicions grew when Kathy's parents described a chilling moment. During Greg's visit to the hospital, Kathy's daughter showed a clear look of fear upon seeing him. Although she couldn't verbalize what she remembered, the reaction was enough to alarm investigators. Greg was brought in for questioning. He denied any involvement in the murder and said he had an alibi. He was with a friend at the time. During the interview, however, he asked to go outside to move his car due to an expired parking meter and never came back. His wife, Kathy's sister, later stated that Greg had dropped her off at 10:30 a.m. the morning of the murder and picked her up at 2:30 p.m. That gave him a 4-hour window, which aligned with the estimated time of death. Despite the circumstantial evidence, investigators still didn't have enough to formally charge Greg. The case stalled again, but the search for justice wasn't over. In a final effort, investigators decided to ... After collecting a sample from Kathy's body, police decided to run a forensic test, even though DNA technology at the time was still limited. In 1987, forensic labs could only determine the blood type from semen samples, and unfortunately, the sample collected from Kathy was too small for a full DNA test. Still, the test was conducted. The results showed that the blood type matched Greg's. While this was a strong indication, it wasn't enough for an arrest. Blood type alone couldn't prove guilt, despite their suspicions and the family's belief that Greg was responsible. The police couldn't take legal action. Kathy's sister, Shell, who was married to Greg, refused to believe he was involved. She continued to live with him, even as the investigation dragged on for years. 11 years later, in 1998, the case was revisited. Advances in DNA testing gave police new hope. They re-examined the remaining biological evidence, and experts were able to extract a partial DNA profile from the sample. The results were telling. Greg was among the 2% of the population whose DNA could match. But again, it wasn't a conclusive match. It wasn't enough to secure a conviction. Greg was brought in for more questioning. This time, he changed his story. He now claimed he had been romantically involved with Kathy and had visited her the day she died, but insisted she was alive when he left. This shift in his narrative immediately raised red flags. It's not uncommon for suspects to alter their stories after being confronted with DNA evidence. Moreover, Greg's claims of a romantic relationship directly contradicted what Kathy had told her family, that she was deeply uncomfortable around Greg due to his inappropriate behavior. Without a full DNA match or confession, the case hit another dead end. Prosecutors knew a guilty verdict would be difficult, if not impossible, to secure. Once again, the investigation went cold. In 2002, determined to find the truth, the police reopened the case. They reached out to a forensic scientist named Catherine Long, who was leading groundbreaking research in DNA analysis at the time. Catherine and her team asked a crucial question. Could the killer's DNA still exist on Kathy's body, or on any of the objects used in the crime? To test this theory, they conducted a simulation. Volunteers briefly strangled one another in controlled conditions. And afterward, the team took samples from each other's hands and necks. The results were promising. Even minimal physical contact left behind enough skin cells to extract DNA. Encouraged, investigators went back to the physical evidence. Kathy's body could no longer be examined, but there was one item still in police custody: the cord of decorative lights used to bind her wrists. It had been carefully stored in a breathable paper bag, ideal for preserving biological material. Catherine's team used cotton swabs to collect samples along the full length of the cord, focusing especially on areas where Kathy's blood was still visible. Their efforts paid off. 2 DNA profiles were discovered. The first belonged to Kathy. The second was a full match to Greg. 15 years after Kathy's brutal murder, police finally had the evidence they needed. Greg was arrested in custody. Greg denied killing Kathy. He clung to his story that he had visited her that day and they had a consensual relationship. But the evidence said otherwise. While awaiting trial, a surprising twist came from inside the jail. One of Greg's cellmates contacted authorities and claimed that Greg had confessed to the murder. According to the cellmate, Greg described everything in detail. He had been using drugs the day of the attack and went to Kathy's house. When he tried to force himself on her, and she refused, he became violent. He then turned on Kathy's daughter, severely injuring her. Fearing for her children's lives, Kathy complied with Greg's demands. He tied her up, assaulted her, and stabbed her repeatedly, mostly in the abdomen. After the murder, Greg cleaned himself in the bathroom and changed into clothes belonging to Kathy's husband before leaving the house, hoping to cover his tracks. Faced with mounting evidence and the jailhouse confession, Greg finally admitted to killing Kathy. In 2004, Greg pleaded guilty in court. He was sentenced to 45 years in prison, but justice would not be long-lived. Just 4 years later, Greg died of liver cancer at age 56. As for Kathy's husband, Mike, who had once been a suspect, he passed away at the age of 45. Kathy's parents and children had spent over a decade waiting for justice. Though they always believed Greg was the killer, they had no power to stop him from living with Shell, Kathy's sister, 4 years after the crime. But in the end, the truth came out, and Kathy's family finally got the closure they had long waited for. Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into another chilling case, the heartbreaking story of Michaela Garrett. Sharon and Rod Garrett spent 5 long years trying to have a child. After countless medical visits and fertility treatments, their prayers were finally answered. On January 24, 1979, their miracle baby, Michaela, was born in Oakland, California. Michaela Garrett's Saturday began like any other in Hayward, California. That morning, her best friend, Katrina Rodriguez, stopped by and asked if Michaela could accompany her to the local grocery store to buy some snacks. Michaela's mother, Sharon, initially declined, but Michaela pleaded with her, promising they'd be quick and careful. Eventually, Sharon relented. She gave Michaela $5 and reminded both girls to stay safe. The girls grabbed their scooters and headed out, Michaela pausing at the door to say, "I love you" to her mother a moment. Sharon would remember forever. While Michaela and Katrina rode to the nearby Rainbow Market on Mission Boulevard, Sharon returned to the kitchen to clean up breakfast, and her husband Rod went outside to work on the car. The girls parked their scooters outside the store and went inside, excitedly chatting about their holiday plans. They bought 2 Mountain Dews, beef jerky sticks, and cherry toffees. But as they left the store, they realized they had forgotten their scooters. When they returned to retrieve them, Michaela noticed one scooter had been moved, now standing beside a car parked a few spaces away. She walked over and bent to grab it. Suddenly, a man sprang from the car, grabbed Michaela by the waist, and forced her into the back seat. Before Katrina could react, the car sped off down Mission Boulevard toward Union City. Katrina, frozen with shock, regained her composure and ran back inside the store to alert the cashier, Rona Rowland. Rona immediately called the police and also notified Katrina's father. Meanwhile, Sharon, still washing dishes, heard her husband's panicked voice shout through the house. Michaela had been kidnapped. Rod and Sharon raced to the market, where police were already on the scene, questioning witnesses. Katrina, traumatized, was allowed to go home. Rod and Sharon stayed, desperate for answers. As Sharon waited, she recalled a chilling memory. Just a week earlier, she had found Michaela writing a poem early in the morning. Michaela said the poem was inspired by sounds she heard from the attic and was about people being held captive, not killed, but trapped and afraid. It was an eerie piece, out of character for her typically happy daughter. Sharon would later wonder if Michaela had somehow sensed what was coming. Police got to work. Cashier Rona described the suspect as a white male in his 30s with a mustache, driving a burgundy or maroon car. Based on her account, a sketch was created and distributed to news outlets and law enforcement. The abducted scooter was recovered, and a partial handprint was lifted from its handle, but it didn't match anyone in the system. The next day, the FBI joined the investigation. They suspected possible connections to other child abduction cases in the area, but found nothing conclusive. Investigators soon realized they needed more from Katrina, the only eyewitness to the actual kidnapping. 2 days after the incident, officers visited Katrina at home. Her description of the abductor was drastically different. She described a white male in his early 20s with dirty blonde hair, acne scars, and piercing blue fox-like eyes. She was certain his car was beige or tan, boxy, and visibly damaged, contradicting the earlier description. With this new information, authorities feared they had wasted the critical first 48 hours pursuing the wrong lead. The sketch was revised and redistributed. Volunteers canvassed neighborhoods and nearby parks, handing out posters and asking for tips. Michaela's clothing, a white Metro t-shirt, rolled-up jeans, black Mary Jane shoes, and pearl feather earrings, was included in the flyers. A tip from hikers led authorities to search Niles Canyon and Garin National Park after they claimed to see footprints and a blanket. Despite efforts by ground teams, horseback patrols, and infrared-equipped helicopters, Michaela had vanished without a trace. The story gripped the nation. Michaela's face was printed on milk cartons and featured on Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted. Over 50 million flyers were mailed. San Francisco 49ers quarterback Joe Montana publicly urged people to help find Michaela. A $70,000 reward was offered for any information. More than 5,000 tips poured in over the next year, but most led nowhere. Sharon, desperate for answers, even chased leads as far as Russia, but came up empty. In 1992, a man named Roger Haggard, serving time for burglary, claimed he had helped bury Michaela's body in a Union City field. Investigators were skeptical, but brought him before a grand jury. Roger promised to show them the location, but after an 8-hour search, he admitted he had lied to give the family closure. He was charged with perjury and sentenced to 6 more years in prison, along with a $6,000 fine for giving false hope to the Garrett family. Another person of interest emerged, Lawrence Larry Bidner, a wastewater treatment worker and father. Despite appearing normal, Larry was reported by multiple East Bay parents for strange behavior, sending gifts and money to young girls and writing cryptic letters in mirrored text. He drove a light blue van with the vanity plate "Lavo" filled with children's photos and Bible verses. He had a prior arrest for attempting to lure 2 girls into his vehicle. Though charges were dropped, Larry contacted both Sharon Garrett and Kim Schwartz, mother of another missing girl, Amber Schwartz. Both women later told police they felt unnerved by his attention. After extensive investigation and a defamation lawsuit he won against the city, police concluded that Larry was not directly involved, but rather a disturbed man obsessed with missing child cases. In 2000, a new suspect emerged, Curtis Dean Anderson, arrested for the 1999 abduction and murder of 7-year-old Shiana Fairchild. He later confessed to killing 13 other girls, including Amber Schwartz. In 1989, the year Michaela disappeared, Anderson had been pulled over driving a brown 1977 Chevy sedan, similar to Katrina's description. In 2007, Anderson died from organ failure before more could be uncovered, but his confession reignited interest in Michaela's case. That interest grew further in 2012 when Wesley Shermantine, one half of the infamous Speed Freak killers, suggested that his partner, Lauren Herzog, resembled the composite sketch of Michaela's kidnapper. Katrina later confirmed that Lauren did, in fact, bear a striking resemblance to the man who took her friend. Investigators searched an abandoned well connected to the killers and found thousands of bone fragments, some possibly Michaela's, but a definitive identification could not be made. For years, the case remained unsolved. Then, in December 2020, a shocking breakthrough came. The Hayward Police Department along with the FBI, made an announcement. A breakthrough after 32 years. The Michaela Garrick case narrator. After decades of dead ends and shattered hopes, investigators finally made a stunning announcement in the disappearance of 9-year-old Michaela Garrick. Despite earlier focus on serial killers Lauren Herzog and Wesley the real breakthrough came in 2020, when forensic science did what 3 decades of searching could not, thanks to advancements in fingerprint technology. A partial print lifted from Michaela's scooter back in 1988 was matched to a previously overlooked suspect, David Mish, a then 61-year-old man already serving time at Santa Rita jail. The match was enough for prosecutors to charge Mish with Michaela's kidnapping and murder. It was the first concrete development in years. Cut 2. Archive criminal background. Born in 1961 in Chicago, David Mish had a deeply disturbing history. By age 16, he had already committed violent crimes. In 1977, he was convicted for breaking into a home and sexually assaulting a maid at knife point. He was sentenced, but inexplicably paroled just a year later. His violence escalated. In 1979, he was arrested again for false imprisonment and assault with a deadly weapon. Then, in 1988, the same year Michaela vanished, Mish was released from a 6-month burglary sentence in San Leandro. But in December of that year, things took a darker turn. Mish's friend, 38-year-old Margaret Ball, was found brutally murdered, beaten, and stabbed. Her tooth found several feet from her body. Mish was convicted of her killing and sentenced to 18 years to life. While serving that sentence, new DNA evidence tied him to the 1986 double homicide of Michelle Xavier, 18, and Jennifer Dewey, 20. 2 women who were kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and murdered in Fremont, California. Their car was found abandoned 6 miles from their bodies, with the 2020 fingerprint match. Police finally linked Mish to Michaela Garrick's abduction. Cut to press conference at a press briefing. Law enforcement confirmed that Mish now faced multiple charges, including 3 counts of murder and 1 of abduction. The possibility of the death penalty loomed. Rod Garrick, Michaela's father, drove more than 100 miles to attend. Fighting back emotion, he said he finally felt some relief, knowing that there was now a suspect and a chance that they might find Michaela. Sharon Murch, Michaela's mother, was unable to attend due to her battle with metastatic cancer. A police officer read her heartfelt statement aloud. She acknowledged that she had come to accept the heartbreaking reality that Michaela might never come home. Still, she found peace imagining her daughter dancing on hills, walking golden streets, and soaring among the stars. Cut to legal response. David Mish's attorney, Bernie Castillo, harshly criticized the investigation. He dismissed the fingerprint match as junk science and accused law enforcement of seeking an easy scapegoat after 32 years of failure. Katrina Rodriguez, Michaela's childhood friend who had witnessed the abduction, has carried decades of guilt. The scooter that was stolen was hers, and she often feels it should have been her instead. The trauma left her suppressing much of her childhood. Sharon, in contrast, never stopped searching. She combed phone books, chased international leads, and later turned to the internet. But after Mish was charged and Sharon's health declined, her pursuit slowed. She passed away in May 2022, believing she would soon be reunited with Michaela. Final section. Current status. David Mish is now awaiting trial for Michaela's abduction and murder, as well as the killings of Michelle, Xavier, and Jennifer Dewey. Yet a new complication threatens the case. His defense team argues that the forensic evidence is flawed and circumstantial. Prosecutors maintain confidence, but others, like retired LT Chuck Euler, believe Mish deserves the maximum punishment for the pain he caused over decades. The case, long defined by twists, false leads, and haunting silence, may finally have reached a turning point. And while Michaela's remains have never been found, her memory lives on in the hearts of those who never stopped looking. The shocking truth about Ian and Angela. Further investigation into the events of June 24, 2016, revealed a disturbing truth. The bruises Angela claimed were from an attack were self-inflicted. Ian uncovered CCTV footage supporting this, which completely changed the narrative. As he dug deeper, Ian made even more startling discoveries. Angela had been lying to him since the very beginning of their relationship. One of the most shocking lies was Angela's fake pregnancy. Ian found out she had purchased a phony ultrasound of twins from Etsy for $7.50, along with a positive pregnancy test to support the lie. Her motives became clearer over time. Angela had been obsessed with Ian's ex, Michelle, ever since he told her about their previous legal battle over a condo. Angela discovered Michelle came from a wealthy family and saw her as both a threat and an opportunity. Still bitter about being forced to pay the condo's mortgage after losing a legal dispute with Michelle, Ian teamed up with Angela in a sinister plan to ruin Michelle's life. Ian gave Angela Michelle's email address, and together they devised a plot to frame her. Using VPNs and fake email accounts set up in Michelle's name, they created a web of digital evidence to make it look like Michelle was behind the threats. Michelle, meanwhile, had started receiving alerts from Google about email accounts she had never created. Unbeknownst to her, Angela was behind this suspicious activity. But Angela wasn't finished. She escalated the plan by posting a Craigslist ad in Michelle's name. The AD invited men to act out violent sexual fantasies at her home, an act designed to provoke a terrifying real-world response. However, the scheme began to unravel. Ian, who had grown increasingly disturbed by Angela's behavior, eventually confessed the truth. His confession prompted the police to issue a search warrant for Angela's devices. The results were damning. 21 threatening emails were traced back to Angela and Ian's shared residence. Some of them had been sent from Arizona, where Angela had recently visited her father, confirming her involvement even further. As investigators looked into Angela's past, they uncovered a disturbing pattern. In 2013, while dating California, State Trooper Jason Rayburn, Angela had fabricated an entire identity, claiming to be both a lawyer and a cancer patient. Her lies eventually came to light and ended the relationship, but her deceptive behavior never stopped. On January 6, 2019, Angela was finally arrested. She pleaded guilty to 10 felony charges, including perjury and false imprisonment, and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Just 3 days after her guilty plea, Michelle Hadley was fully cleared of all charges by the Orange County District Attorney's Office, bringing an end to her long nightmare. But the damage was already done. Michelle had spent time in jail, lost her job, and was forced to abandon her MBA studies. Though her name was cleared, the emotional toll was immense. Slowly, she began rebuilding her life. She earned her MBA, landed a job in marketing at a cosmetics company, and eventually moved to New York to live with her sister. Meanwhile, Ian's life continued to spiral. After separating from Angela and selling the condo for $500,000, he, too, faced justice. In 2021, Ian was arrested and charged for his role in framing Michelle. He was convicted of perjury and sentenced to 5 years in prison. During questioning, detectives were stunned when James Worley admitted that he had been out riding his motorcycle on the same day Sierra disappeared. He claimed that his bike had broken down during the ride, causing him to lose several items, among them a helmet and a screwdriver. This revelation immediately caught the attention of investigators. These were the same items that had been discovered near the scene where Sierra's bike was found in the cornfield. The coincidence was too great to ignore. Authorities obtained a warrant and began a thorough search of Worley's property, which included a house, a trailer, and a large barn. What they found was deeply disturbing. Inside a hidden room in one of the outbuildings, police discovered restraints, a blood-stained freezer, zip ties, duct tape, and several pairs of women's underwear. They also recovered a carpet stained with what appeared to be blood. which was promptly sent for testing. As evidence mounted, so did suspicions. James Worley had a violent past, one that included a 1990 conviction for abducting another woman who had managed to escape. He had served 3 years in prison for that crime, but his past behavior had gone largely unnoticed in recent years. DNA analysis later confirmed that the blood found on the motorcycle helmet belonged to Sierra. This critical piece of evidence directly linked Worley to her disappearance. On July 22nd, just 3 days after Sierra vanished, James Worley was arrested and charged with her abduction and murder. Tragically, Sierra's body was found buried in a shallow grave not far from the barn on Worley's property. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community, which had held out hope for her safe return. Candlelight vigils turned into mourning gatherings. The town that had united in search now came together in grief. In court, prosecutors painted Worley as a predator who had carefully planned his attack. They presented overwhelming evidence, including the tools of confinement and his own statements, which contradicted the physical evidence. In 2019, James Worley was convicted on multiple charges, including aggravated murder, kidnapping, and abuse of a corpse. He was sentenced to death and remains on death row to this day. Sierra Jogan's tragic story is a heartbreaking reminder of how quickly lives can be shattered by evil. Though justice was ultimately served, her family continues to carry the weight of her loss. Sierra was a bright, spirited young woman with dreams of traveling the world, and those dreams were stolen far too soon. Welcome back, detectives. Today, we're diving into the disturbing and tragic case of Sierra Jogan. Sierra Jogan was a bright, adventurous young woman who brought joy to everyone around her. Known for her humor, confidence, and determination, she was the kind of person who made a lasting impression. After returning from a family vacation on July 19, 2016, Sierra was looking forward to the upcoming semester at the University of Toledo. She had plans to study abroad and had just purchased a new bike, which she was eager to take out for a ride. That evening, she told her mother she was heading to her boyfriend Josh's house, about 7 miles away, and promised to return by 10:05 p.m. But when Josh tried calling her later, her phone went straight to voicemail. Concerned, he contacted Sierra's mother, who immediately felt something was wrong. The family sprang into action, searching the area and checking every possible route Sierra might have taken. Despite their efforts, there were no signs of her. Eventually, they called the police, and soon after, a neighbor mentioned that County Road 6 had been blocked off by officers at the scene. The atmosphere was chaotic, and authorities wouldn't allow Sierra's family to approach. No information was shared with them, leaving them in a state of panic and helplessness as the hours dragged on with no answers. Sierra's mother and aunt began calling local hospitals. One promising lead came from Detroit. A woman resembling Sierra had escaped from a moving car and was being treated for severe injuries. Hopes rose as Sierra's mom described identifying features, like a scar on her calf and a pierced belly button. But heartbreak soon followed. The woman in the hospital wasn't Sierra. Later that morning, police returned to the Jogan home with an update. While parking near a cornfield during the search, one officer had noticed something odd: disturbed corn stalks, motorcycle tracks, and a glint of something metallic. Sierra's purple bicycle. A closer look revealed a scene that suggested a violent struggle. A screwdriver, a bloody sock, and both male and female sunglasses. With mounting evidence, detectives interviewed friends and family. Focusing on Josh, they learned Sierra and Josh had been best friends since childhood and had begun dating in high school. Though they attended different universities, their relationship remained strong. On the day she disappeared, Sierra had left Josh's house around 6:30 p.m. He accompanied her part of the way on his motorcycle before turning back, at her insistence, so she could bike the rest of the way home alone. Motorcycle tracks found in the cornfield raised suspicions, but when asked, Josh produced his helmet, and his alibi was corroborated by his parents. Police cleared him as a suspect. Meanwhile, a local resident reported finding a motorcycle helmet days earlier near the same area. It had bloodstains. The helmet was sent for DNA testing, raising hopes of a break in the case. The disappearance soon garnered community-wide support. Volunteers formed search parties. Candlelight vigils were held. Hope, fear, and determination filled the town. Then, police received a tip. A suspicious van had been seen speeding through the area around the time Sierra vanished. The van's owner explained he had sped up in fear after another vehicle quickly approached from behind, possibly a frantic searcher. Still, the van was ruled out, with no solid leads. Police continued searching door to door until they arrived at the rural home of James Worley, a man who lived with his mother. James told detectives he had been out riding his motorcycle the day Sierra vanished and that he had lost his helmet and a screwdriver. These items, of course, had been found at the scene. Detectives also noticed fresh scratches on his face scratches. That could have come from a struggle. Their suspicion grew. A deeper dive into James Worley's past revealed a disturbing truth. In 1989, he had attempted to kidnap 26-year-old Robin Gardner. She had gone out for a bike ride when a car hit her, sending her flying into a ditch. The driver Worley initially pretended to offer help before attacking her with a screwdriver, handcuffing one wrist and trying to force her into his car. Robin fought back and, just as she was beginning to lose hope, a motorcyclist happened upon the scene. She escaped, and the biker took her home. Police arrested Worley at the scene, though he denied any malicious intent. Claiming he handcuffed her for her safety, he was convicted and sentenced to 6 to 10 years. He served only 3. Back in 2016, this past made Worley a prime suspect. In Sierra's case, police obtained a warrant to search his property. On the surface, nothing seemed out of place until they examined a large barn behind the house. Inside, they found sealed bags containing women's clothing, including bloody purple underwear. They also discovered a hidden freezer, an air mattress with stains, duct tape, zip ties, and handcuffs. Worley claimed he was operating a pornography business, but investigators weren't buying it. All items were sent for DNA testing. Combined with the evidence found in the cornfield, police arrested James Worley for Sierra's murder. As the investigation intensified, they searched his entire property, including draining a pond and inspecting the insulation in his attic. Still, Sierra's body was nowhere to be found. Eventually, a neighboring farmer contacted authorities. He had spotted flattened corn and a mound of fresh dirt in his field. Police responded immediately. With the help of search dogs, they located human remains tragically confirmed to be Sierra Jokin. Her hands were bound behind her back. Her feet were shackled with handcuffs. A foreign object had been forced into her mouth, restricting her airway and ultimately causing her death. It was a horrifying, heartbreaking discovery. 1 month later, James Worley was indicted on 19 charges, including kidnapping and aggravated murder. In 2018, after a 2-year wait, he stood trial. Despite pleading not guilty, the jury found him guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to death. The Toyota then circled the area near Khan's car wash several times. Raja and Ennis were carefully timing their approach, waiting to be on the correct side of the street to carry out the attack. During the 4th pass, the Toyota slowed, and, by coincidence, Khan was visible near the business. Raja aimed and fired, but mistakenly shot an employee, missing his intended target. Tragically, the second bullet struck Aya Hakim, who was walking nearby, following the shooting. Raja and Ennis abandoned the Toyota and escaped in a separate vehicle driven by Chapman and Cecil. Meanwhile, security footage from Sulman's business showed Oz Hussein entering the premises. At that point, Suleiman discreetly signaled others present to move upstairs, away from view. Abu Bakr Sessa, who had purchased the Toyota used in the crime, was also in the store and appeared alarmed when police scanners announced the vehicle had been located. He quickly conferred with Solman. 9 days after Aya's death, Raja fled to Portugal and reunited with Enes at Lisbon airport. Both men had escaped the UK. In the meantime, law enforcement was rounding up the others involved. Sulman was arrested on May 18th, the day after the shooting. Sessa followed on May 19th. Chapman and Sessa were apprehended on May 20th. Hussein and Manzoor on May 21st. Raja was captured at a London train station on June 6th, while Enes was arrested in Spain on July 4th and extradited done initially. All suspects denied involvement, but under growing pressure, their stories began to contradict each other. As the investigation intensified, they started revealing critical details, implicating one another in hopes of lighter sentences. On August 5th, 2021, the court issued its final verdicts. Solman, the mastermind, who already had a prior conviction for a fatal hit-and-run in 2001, received life imprisonment with a minimum of 34 years. Raja, the gunman, was also sentenced to life with the same minimum term, reportedly paid just £500 for the murder. Driver Anthony Enes received a life sentence with a minimum of 33 years. Hussein was given a life sentence with a 32-year minimum. Abu Bakr Sessi, who purchased the getaway car, was sentenced to at least 28 years. Usman, Sessi, and Chapman, who provided transport, received minimum terms of 28 and 15 years, respectively. Kashif Manzoor, responsible for ensuring the Toyota was functional, was sentenced to a minimum of 27 years. The presiding judge criticized the group harshly for showing no remorse and attempting to mislead investigators. Once deception failed, many turned on each other to reduce their own punishment. Further investigation revealed 2 additional conspirators. Lewis Adwi, 42, from Manchester, served as an intermediary between Hussein, Raja, and Enes. He was sentenced to life in prison on May 5, 2023, with a minimum of 32 years. Additionally, Banbridge, a 32-year-old woman, admitted to manipulating cell phone data to create a false alibi for Raja and Enes. She was sentenced to 23 months in prison on August 11, 2023, bringing the total number of convicted individuals, in Aya's case, to 10. The Deshpan family murders. Indoors triple homicide mystery. Hello, and welcome back, detectives. Today, we'll uncover a chilling case from India triple homicide that stunned the city of Indore in June 2011. In the heart of the upscale Shaner area, 3 women were found brutally murdered inside their home. The tragedy not only shocked their neighborhood, but also ignited a complex and urgent police investigation. A quiet home in a peaceful city, 42-year-old Megha Deshpande lived in the posh Shaner locality of Indore with her 21-year-old daughter, Ashelsha, and her 70-year-old mother, Rohini. Megha worked as a senior employee at a multi-level marketing MLM company, while her husband, a bank manager, remained in Ujjain about 35 miles away for work. Financially secure and socially well-regarded, the Deshpandes were respected members of their community. Indore, consistently ranked as one of India's cleanest cities, had never seen a crime of this nature in its upper-class neighborhoods. That made what happened on June 13th all the more horrifying. A gruesome discovery that afternoon. Neighbors noticed something strange. Bloody footprints near the Deshpande residence. Alarmed, one neighbor knocked repeatedly on the door, but received no response. Peering through a window, they saw a sight that made them scream in horror. 3 women lay lifeless inside, surrounded by blood. Soon, a large crowd had gathered. The police arrived and sealed off the crime scene. Inside, they found 2 spent bullet casings and signs of a violent struggle. Megha had been shot in the head, while Ashosha and Rohini had been stabbed multiple times. Yet there was a troubling detail: the police could only account for 1 gunshot wound. Where had the second bullet gone? The investigation begins with pressure mounting from the public and Mega's grieving husband. The police launched a multi-pronged investigation. One team examined phone records, while another reanalyzed the forensic evidence. Blood from a fourth individual, someone not part of the Deshpande family, was found at the crime scene, suggesting the killer might have been injured. Investigators also noted repeated phone calls between Mega and a young woman named Neha Varma. Neha was tracked down at an ATM and brought in for questioning. An unlikely connects. Ganaya, a 23-year beautician from a modest background, claimed she had met Mega by accident at a shopping mall. The two exchanged numbers, and Mega introduced Neha to her MLM business, but police were unconvinced. Her nervous body language and inconsistent answers raised suspicions. After sustained interrogation, Neha broke down and confessed a tale even the police didn't expect. A deadly plan, fueled by desperation, had fallen in love with Rahul Chowdhury, a 24-year-old man whose financial situation was just as bleak as hers. Despite being good-looking and charismatic, Rahul lacked the resources to live the life he wanted. Together, Neha and Rahul hatched a deadly plan to rob Mega. On the day of the murders, the couple entered the Deshpande home under the pretense of a visit, but once inside, they attacked. Mega was shot in the head, likely by Rahul, while Osholsha and Rohini were stabbed repeatedly. The motive was robbery, but the crime had clearly spiraled into something far more brutal. As details of the horrific act unfolded, what shocked the community most was the cold calculation and cruelty behind the murders committed, not by hardened criminals, but by a desperate young couple chasing their dream of wealth at any cost.